So let's get straight into it. A hernia is a perforation, and when it comes to the inguinal hernia, this is a perforation of perhaps the abdominal contents into the inguinal canal. Now, to understand the anatomy of it is very important, and this will make sense. This is a mnemonic that we'll come to in a little bit. So let's start off with where, for example, the inguinal ligament would be. So if, let's say, this is the anterior superior iliac spine, and here this is your pubic tubercle, and this is the inguinal ligament, so around halfway would be your inguinal canal. Okay. And this is your deep inguinal ring, so I'll mark it with a D. And this is your superficial inguinal ring, so I'll mark it with an S. Now, above here somewhere, come down your rectus abdominis muscle. Remember the mnemonic that I gave? Rectus abdominis muscle. I'll just mark that in, RA for a six-pack. Okay. So that's your rectus abdominal muscle. This is your pubic tubercle. Here's your anterior superior iliac spine. And around halfway down extends your inguinal canal. And now these are the important things. From here, extend your inferior epigastric vessels. Your inferior epigastric vessels. So I'll label that. And those are important when it comes to the two types of hernias, which we'll discuss. Inferior epigastric vessels. Okay. Now, so that's your inguinal canal. Now, remember this is your deep ring, inguinal ring, and here's your superficial inguinal ring. Now, what's important is that there are two types of hernias, and the first type is one that would come down and actually perforate directly into the inguinal canal, then go out through the superficial inguinal ring. That's your first one, and that is known as your direct inguinal hernia. So that one is known as your, so it's in green, so I'm marking it in green here as well. That one is your direct inguinal hernia. Okay, and what about this one? There's another type, is when it would come down from here, the contents would come down from here, go first through the deep inguinal ring, go through the inguinal canal, and then go through the superficial inguinal ring. Okay, and this hernia is known as your indirect. Your indirect inguinal hernia. Okay, so you have your two types. Now, what's important anatomically is the location of your inferior epigastric vessels. Now, while your direct inguinal hernia is, as you can see, your direct one, remember the one that does not need to take the longer route, the one that does not need to go through first the deep inguinal ring and then the superficial inguinal ring. It's the one that just goes directly into the inguinal canal. Now this one is medial to your inferior epigastric vessels. Now that's important clinically as well. Medial to your inferior epigastric vessels. Your inferior epigastric vessels. Why? Because remember, anything that goes, if this is a midline, anything that goes towards the midline is medial to it, and anything that goes away from the midline is lateral. So your deep direct inguinal hernia is medial to your inferior epigastric vessels because it's on the medial side of this. And your indirect inguinal hernia, which is over here, is lateral. It is lateral to the inferior epigastric vessels. Okay, so now that that's established, this whole triangle, rectus abdominis, IEV, and your inguinal canal, is known as the Hesselbach's triangle from here. Okay, and then what about this? Okay, so another important clinically relevant thing is when it comes to the hernia itself, the swelling would typically arise here, unless it is a complete one. So it's kind of like typically arising here, okay? So that's in relation to the pubic tubercle. In relation to the PT, this is actually above and medial. As you can see, the swelling would most likely appear here. So that would be kind of above and medial. So medial in that way towards the midline. Okay? Now, when it comes to comparing it with the femoral hernia, this one typically arises over here, and remember this blue dot here is your PT, is your pubic tubercle. So the femoral hernia is actually the opposite, so it's actually below and lateral to the pubic tubercle. So a quick mnemonic there is this one, I am. So the inguinal hernia, so I for inguinal, does come above and medial. Okay, thank you. If you like this video, please leave a comment or like it. Thank you.